so glad you're here. And I'm going to be really happy to launch into this conversation. So, as you can see, the name of this program is Building an Ethical Economy. And in my mind, it's rebuilding an ethical economy. The Islamic way of doing business, of handling money, is ancient. It is just the fair way that every human being recognizes as the right way to do it. And we got lost for a long time. And so here in Minnesota, we have just been so blessed by the arrival of a diversity of ways of being Muslim, and just being so strong in our attitudes about that, and that, of course, we're going to run our lives according to the way Allah has asked us to do it and told us to do. So, mashallah, my name is Johanna Osman, Joanna, and I am the director of Sakan Community Resource. It's a nonprofit that is dedicated to helping anyone in Minnesota, because that's where our charter is, anyone in Minnesota should have access to stable homes and the financial tools that are within their faith guidelines. So you don't have to be a Muslim to fit into what our goal is. It's just that Muslims have a harder time getting those financial tools that are inside their faith guidelines. So let's see what happens when I do that. Bismillah. Okay. So Sakan Community Resource is this nonprofit, and we started in 2016, and we had about 15 people in the room, all having different ideas of what was really important to accomplish in Minnesota, in the Muslim community. And it boiled down to that our community needed stable homes, and that they needed the way to get them to be adhering to Islamic guidelines. So one of our group came up with the perfect word, which is Sakan Community Resource. And the word Sakan it's a beautiful word. It's an Arabic word, and it means, altogether, it means stable, it means tranquil, and it means house or home. And so, if you juggle all of that, it means with a stable home, you can find tranquility. And I just love that line, and it really is what we're trying to do. And when we need to recalibrate and figure out why things aren't working, it's because we lost sight of that the goal is a little bit different from, everybody in that room has a little bit different idea. So we have developed over the years this. At first, we thought it's just to make it possible for people to buy their homes, and what do people need in Minnesota but zero-interest mortgages? Okay, so we brought in another zero-interest mortgage company to compete with the one that was well-known, and a few people got their houses, and then they stopped. And then we realized, people need down payment assistance. So we changed the program, and we got a lot of people ready to get down payment assistance. And a few people got into that, and then they stopped. And then we realized the reason that people are stopping, not getting qualified for their zero-interest mortgages, is because they needed a long pathway built long before that day that they're going to buy their house, or the day they even start looking for their house. They needed to have financial stability. They really needed to understand how our economy works, and how the resources that we have in Minnesota will work for them. So, on that note, we have assembled just five wonderful community members and speakers who will tackle a different part of that pathway that leads to home ownership, or starting a business, or just being safe and solid in your rental apartment. Whatever it is that you're looking for, these steps will get you there. So I want to introduce, and you know what? My notes are gone, so I'm doing it off the cuff. How about you introduce yourself? That would be fantastic.
That's awkward.
I don't want to wait for looking.
Do you want to stand?
Yes, please, come to the microphone.
I'm looking for your notes.
No, look at it.
Here they are. There you go.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Good morning. So you don't want to do it, do you? Okay. So this is Mohamed Hussein, and
I'll introduce myself.
yes, go for it.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. So my name is Mohamed Hussein. I'm not going to read my own bio. I'm a business owner. I am a community leader. I'm a graduate from the Islamic University of Medina, the College of Hadith. I also did a pre-med undergrad at George Mason University, and currently run one of the largest language service companies in the States. So, Bismillah. So, alhamdulillah for Islam that addresses not only our spiritual needs, but also our economic needs, and has provided us guidance on what our mindset and our approach and our perspective should be around economics, finances, wealth, money, all of those things. And you'll find, if you look in the Quran and the Sunnah, you'll find so much has been written in the area of transaction, how we transact with one another, and how we create wealth within the community. There's entire categories and dedicated in the books of fiqh to these things. And contrary to what a lot of people think, there's no, categorical aversion in Islam to wealth and prosperity. We have a tendency sometimes to associate, faqr or poverty with closeness or taqwa to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we find so much guidance in the Quran and the Sunnah when it comes to how to create wealth, how to preserve wealth, how to spend it, and how to invest it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told the angels, He said, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, that He was going to make us successors in this world. And we are entrusted with what all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated to us in this world. هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. Everything around us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us. And with that comes a trust. Even in how we spend, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ مُسْتَخْلَفِينَ فِيهِ, right? That we are successors and responsible for this trust and these resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and through the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, it clearly articulates for us how to fulfill that trust, right? When you look at inheritance or zakah or how we spend or moderation or miserliness or hoarding and all of these things, there's guidance within the tradition about all of these things. And if you take a step back and we connect with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah says, Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayatid dunya. That wealth and children are the adornment of this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it has been beautified to people the love for the desires in women and children and heaps of gold and silver and branded horses and tilled soil and all of these things. But not once does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala necessarily say that these things are bad. He just tells us the things that have been made attractive to us. And then He gave us guidance in terms of how to interact with those things, how to engage with those things. And He reminds us as well when He says, when we look at all that He's given us and all the great things in this world that we're able to benefit from and enjoy in this life, He says, قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ لِعِبَادِهِ وَالطَّيِّبَاتِ مِنَ الرِّزْقِ. Like we're not in a position to say these things are haram. all these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made beautified for us, all these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, desirous for us, within the scope and within lines of the teachings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, we are allowed to engage with these things. So when we look at even the pillars of Islam, we find that the third pillar is an economic pillar, right, which is the pillar of zakah, right? And the zakah, which is obviously one of the major pillars of Islam, it shows us and it illustrates that there is no separation in Islam between wealth and worship, right? And that's just zakah that's required to be paid by those who meet the conditions, and it's paid to those who meet the criteria. But even if you move away from zakah and you look at salah, for example, well, for the salah you need masajid, and we don't live in a Muslim country, and we don't have a ministry of Islamic affairs that's going to go and build masajids for us and have these endowments. We have to build those things ourselves, and that requires resources and wealth. You look at Hajj and Umrah. In order to perform Hajj and Umrah, you need resources. You need to be able to pay for a plane ticket and pay for your accommodation and all these other things. Rather, it's not even obligatory on someone to make Hajj if they don't have the financial means to do so. Right? When you look at so many of the other righteous deeds that we can do, so much of that is tied to, wealth and financial, viability. Even taking care of our loved ones, engaging and spreading the da'wah. Like you look at, for example, what we have today. We have this major convention, and all of you paid for your tickets to be here, but this event is not covered by ticket sales alone. I think everybody's aware of that, right? There's sponsors and other people who help to support these types of events, and it requires a community that it has a strong economic well-being. So the point is, when we look at the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, and we look at his companions, and we look at his life more closely, and examine what he said about, what the Prophet ﷺ said about, wealth and earning and all of these things, he says many things. And part of what makes wealth and the pursuit of a financial well-being so important is to preserve the pride and the dignity of the individual, first and foremost. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Al-yadul ulya khayrun min al-yad as-sufla." He said the giving hand is better than the hand that takes. And if you look throughout the prophetic tradition, the Prophet ﷺ, time and time again, there's so many examples of him telling us that it's better to go and earn for yourself and take care of yourself than to be one who takes. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, the muhajirin, the poor amongst them, because amongst the companions there were poor and there were rich. The poor amongst them, they came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, ذهب أهل الدثور بالأجور. Like those who have, those who are doing well have taken financially, have taken all of the reward. They pray like we pray, they fast like we fast, but they can give sadaqah and we can't give sadaqah. So Prophet ﷺ, this is the hadith where he encourages them to make tasbih and tahmeed and takbir after every salah 33 times. So they take that and they go and they make the tasbih, and then they realize, oh, the people that have wealth, they can also do this, right? So they come back to the Prophet ﷺ, and they're like, yeah, exactly, darn it, like what are we gonna do? Like they can do that too. They make tasbih and tahmeed and takbir after salah as well. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, you know what? ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That is the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He bestows it upon whom He wills. And the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not something that you just wait for. It's something that you go and seek. فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Jum'ah prayer, He tells us when the adhan for Jum'ah is called, فَاسْعُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Right? Leave what you're doing, close your shops, leave, lock your computer and go to the masjid. Right? And when you're done, come back. فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا. I have to make a more relevant example because most of us are not shop owners. Most of us are sitting behind a keyboard. So lock your computer and go back, right? فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. Go and seek the provision of your Lord. The Prophet ﷺ, he would make dua. Part of his morning tasbih was his morning dua was Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ma'thami wal-maghrам. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I seek refuge in you from sin and debt. From sin and debt. And they asked him, we understand, they asked, O Prophet of Allah, we understand the sin part, why the debt? He said, if a man is in debt, he lies and he breaks his promises. Right? Have you ever had anybody who owed you money? And that you're chasing down for the money, and all the excuses about why they can't pay you and how they're gonna get to you, and and give me another 6 weeks, and making up all sorts of stories. My brother's sick, my mom is this, my father is that, I had to travel. It causes people to do things that are unbecoming. And my last point is with wealth, the creation of wealth, one of the objectives of Islam is hifz al-mal, right, is the preservation of wealth. And when the great scholars, when they talk about this, they say, well, in order to preserve it, you first have to create it. So the first step in achieving the maqasid of Islam, the objectives of Islam, is to create that wealth and then to preserve it. All right, I'm done.
Amazing. Nice job.
Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar. Thank you so much. I told you it's going to be a wonderful session. Bismillah. So now to talk about the things that Sheikh Mohamed was mentioning. Bismillah. I have invited Aliasgher Walji to come and talk about making that plan, setting your sights on a future goal and how are you going to get there. Aliasgher was born in Kenya, and he arrived in Minnesota when he was 7 years old. Big shock. I hope it wasn't in the wintertime. It was in the wintertime, subhanAllah. And he grew up in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis. And in his early days, he worked in technology sales at Best Buy and Sears and small tech startups, and then at Wells Fargo in the corporate offices. And that, it sparked something in him, made him more mindful of the Islamic values, and how it was difficult to adhere to those when Muslims and non-Muslims are interacting in the workplace and in the economy. So it led him to think to take a dive into the Islamic Wealth Management Company. Aliasgher is regional director for Sharia portfolio. So he's going to talk to you about his life and how financial plan runs his life. Welcome.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Yeah, you can put it up.
So my talk is going to be a little bit less structured and more just, I guess, from my own experiences rather than from the guidance that we've received from the scholars. I'll leave the scholars to give you the guidance from the Quran and such, but I'll just provide a little bit of anecdotal, not evidence, but more along the lines of from my own experiences, right? I've worked in a variety of different fields. I've worked at Best Buy, I've worked at Sears. My first job was at age 14. I was working as a technology sales representative at Sears in Brooklyn Center. It's closed down now, unfortunately. Every time I drive by and I see the Walmart and I just see the empty building, and it's kind of sad, but that was my first job. And what led me to go and start working at age 14 was that in our household, we had a rule. Every month on a certain date, we would sit down as a family. I have 5 siblings, so there was 5 of us, and my parents. We would sit down on the same date every month, and we would write out all our expenses. We would write down what are we paying for, and everybody had to be aware that this is what's going on in the house. Running the house is not free. There's bills that we have to pay, and it's not just dad and mom's responsibility. Everybody needs to take and shoulder on their part, right? Especially being from a first-generation immigrant family, right? We didn't know how to handle and navigate the society that we live in here. So it was very important that we did this every month, and it didn't matter that I was 7 when we came here. It didn't matter when I was, struggling to now, figure out high school and figure out college and where am I going to go, how am I going to pay for it, all of these things. None of that mattered. It was a family sit down once a month, right? And so I was working at Sears, I worked at Best Buy, and then I moved, while I was in college, I went and started working at Wells Fargo, and I was working in their corporate office in the mortgage department. And it was not fun. Let me tell you, when you have to call somebody and tell them you need to pay or else you have to go, like you have to leave your house, that's not a fun experience to have, and it didn't seem ethical, right? And it made me realize and understand the value of like Sheikh was talking about earlier, that Islam is a holistic religion, right? It doesn't just provide us religious guidance, it provides us guidance in all assets or all aspects of our life. And so it made me think a lot about what I could be doing differently. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up joining Sharia Portfolio. It's a small asset wealth management firm, right? And one of the things I wanted to highlight, I don't know if the slide is in here, one of the things or the facets that we really want to highlight is that out of 100%, right? You have 100% of your money. How do you split it up?
That's it. That's right about that. Yep.
We want to live within our means, and 70% of your income, 70% of what you earn in a month, that should be sustainable for all of your expenses, right? 10% you want to be saving. 10%, like Sheikh mentioned, is in giving, right? As Muslims, that is part of our responsibility. The last 10%, how we view it, is investing in yourself, right? And how does that come about, right? Investing in yourself could be as simple as, I know some brothers are really like particular about their cut, right? Like we have to go to the barber once a month, every 2 weeks, whatever it may be. That might be part of what your self-care looks like, and that might be part of what you're investing in yourself. For others, it might be that I'm going to spend some money on, a language service, right? I want to learn a third language, something that I'm not doing right now, that it may not be useful to where I am in my career, but it's important nonetheless, and that's investing in yourself. You are an asset as well, and the money that you spend in yourself is going to return on you, right? So it's really important that you spend that time and you budget for it, right? You put 70% away. This is your expenses, right? And how I wanted to highlight that, like I said, sort of the easiest way to look at it is I decided to put up our monthly. This is my budget. This is my budget. I do this every month now. My parents are retired. They don't need to see any of this anymore. They live comfortably in Florida with my older brother. Me, my wife, and my little brother, who's still in university, we sit down once a month. I put this on the television in the living room, and we go through it. And there's things on there that, I didn't list, like things that are important to my wife that, some of her goal areas, some things that she might be working on. That's part of her own thing. But these are the things that I wanted to highlight. This is how we budget on a monthly basis. And part of that, right, is our savings. So the 30% that we were talking about, 10% for savings, 10% for giving, and 10% for investing in yourself, it's all listed under savings, right? So date nights are important. I'm a newlywed. I've only gotten married 2 years ago now. It's not been that long. And it's important that we go out at least once a month. And we had to put that on there because that's part of budgeting. That's part of what's important to us, and we established that right away. So we put that in, and that's how we go about it. So it's really not that hard. It isn't that complicated. It's not difficult to figure out a system. This checklist, by the way, I didn't make it. It was on Excel. They have little templates that you can get. It's very simple, very easy to get, and it's not that hard to follow through once a month. If we watch television every night, you can do this once a month.
And bottom line is, if you don't do it, you're never going to get to those things that you really want to do.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So now I'm going to introduce you to the next speaker, and it's Sister Fatoun Ali. She arrived on American soil in 1998 as a native of Somalia and survivor of a Kenya refugee camp. She was married and at the time uneducated and pregnant with a child who eventually passed away at 4 months. God bless him. Through all these challenges, she has a strong desire to create a better life for herself and her family. And she is now expanding that to a nonprofit that she has founded called Somali Youth and Family Development Center. So like many immigrants who came before her, she knows that her path to achieving success would come through education and hard work. And the ensuing 20 years, she has learned English, earned an Associate of Arts degree, pursued entrepreneurial endeavors, operated a home health care agency, and started a nonprofit organization. So I want to meet Sister Fatoun Ali, and she's going to talk about credit. Ta-da!
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. MashaAllah, I'm so glad to see so many people diverse and everywhere in the world. Beautiful, MashaAllah. Well, I'm here to talk about credit. Many of us may not even know anything about credit because I see so many young faces here and so many immigrants also. As an immigrant, I never knew what credit was. That's not something we have or do back home. So when I learned what credit was, my credit was already messed up at that time because when I came to the U.S., I got Social Security number, 9 numbers, that when I got a job, a lady that I was working for, asked me to rent a house, and I did. And she didn't pay her rent, so it went onto my credit. Some family members asked me to co-sign something, and they never paid for it, so it went on my credit. By the time I was trying to get my own house or get my own apartment, my credit was already ruined. So that was a wake-up call for me. And it took me a while to fix and learn about credit. I took courses to learn about what credit is, how to repair credit, what's on your credit, how to delete certain things on credit, and how to make sure you maintain a good, healthy credit. So today, there are so many things that when you apply for a credit, you have to make sure that you pay on time. You have to pay on time, and also you don't have to wait to pay the full amount. You don't have to wait. You can always pay. And the reason that is because in Islam, we don't believe in interest. So if you use your credit and you pay it within the 30 days, there is no interest that occurs with it. So that's a good thing to know. The other thing is your credit, it's based on all of those 5 categories. One, it's better to use your credit 30% or less. That's what we talk about. To have a healthy, higher, above 700 takes time to build. So if you don't know anything about credit and how to look for your credit, there's websites, free websites that you can go to check your credit, to see what's in there. And if you have questions about how to clean your credit, if you have any unnecessary information that, maybe you have names that you don't recognize, or you have information that is not in your credit, there's a way that you can clean it up. There's free websites, annual credit report, that's one of them. There's Credit Karma, and there's Wise Credit, Sesame Credit. There's so many different apps and websites that you can check your credit. If you don't know how to clean up your credit, I can help you. I'm in the big room. You can find me there. And also, in order for you, if you're interested in buying a home and if you're interested in just building your credit, I can help you also with that. And this is how you can keep your credit. First of all, there are certain things that you can do something about, and there are certain things that you cannot do anything about. It's time. It takes time. So number one, 35% history. You have to make sure you're always paying your bills on time. If you are one of those people that forget your payments, at least do auto pay. So they can take monthly payment automatically. So you have no worries about that. That's one of the things that you can do. If you can, you don't have to wait 30 days. You can pay 20 days after 20 days. And you have to make sure that you're always aware of your bills. And there's other ways that you can, if you don't have credit cards, there's a way that you can build a credit card. Getting a secure credit card is one of them. Having, going to the bank. And there's also apps that you can use for if you're paying your rent on time, that's a credit. If you're paying your utilities on time, there's a credit. You can build your credit. There are so many different ways that you can build your credit and maintain your credit in a healthy way and pay your bills on time so you don't accrue interest. That's it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you can take a class at Sakan that will guide you through all of this, and talk to Sister Fatoun, get her card when you see her at the what are they calling it? The bazaar. Bismillah. So now we have Brother Pat Aylward, who's going to talk to us about investing. Now, this is really a new concept for many immigrants and just about everybody. Everybody thinks they know a little bit about investing because they've heard about Robinhood or Acorn or, all of these strange apps that invite you to spend but give you no advice, and you don't know what you're doing and you're going to lose it. Just bottom line. So this, I wanted to tell you about this, the American IUTA, I'm calling it that. It is really called a lending circle. It is exactly our IUTA or Shalongo or, Gamaiya or Jamaiya. It's a lending circle where you put the same amount in every month, and then you get your big pile when your month comes up. But this is through a nonprofit bank out in California called Mission Asset Funds, and you have to connect your bank account to them, and they will pay you. And every time you pay, they report it to the credit bureaus. So it raises your credit every time you pay into the IUTA. The other thing about the credit, the lending circles that we have, that we just do between us, there's no receipts. There's nothing to show that money belongs to you when you go to buy your house or you go to put a down payment on a car. Where does that money come from? So this gives you, it raises your credit, and it also it has your name on it. There's a statement that goes along with it. So I want you to meet Brother Pat Aylward. He's a real sales executive at Remax Results, and he is. I'm getting nervous. He is our board chair at Sakan. He has been the chairman of the board of PPL, which is the for Project for Pride in Living, and he has been involved with PPL for more than 25 years, and 6 of those years he was the chair of the board of directors, and he is now our current chair at Sakan, and I invite him to come up and talk about investing.
Joanna, will you pull up the investment slide?
Yes, sir. So that, and then this.
Just give me the investment, the one with the different companies on it. Yep.
Okay, there you go.
And Give me a time check at 5 minutes, and I'll end. Assalamu alaikum. So I'm going to speak about halal investments in 5 minutes. That's quite a task here. I was going to talk about ayuto, investment funds, and investment in real estate, and the sister has already covered ayuto, so we're good as far as that goes. When you're considering how to invest your money, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First, probably is risk. Different investments carry different risk factors. Ayuto is probably, of all the different investment opportunities that we'll be talking about, is probably the safest from a risk standpoint. When you're looking at investing in stocks, that carries risk. It depends upon the stock. Or bonds, that carries a different level of risk. When you're considering investing in real estate, again, the risk factor is different. So it's something that you want to consider for yourself. You also want to think about looking at diversifying your portfolio. What diversification means is that don't put all your eggs in one basket necessarily. Again, these are individual decisions, and you want to make these decisions after having gotten as much information and knowledge as you possibly can, considering what your personal situation and what your family situation is, and then what would be best for you as a family. So let's talk about investment funds for just a few minutes. Now, halal investment funds are unique, and they're distinct from traditional investment funds such as Vanguard and other funds like that, in that there are certain industries that a halal fund will not invest in, such as conventional financial services, certain food products, such as pork and alcohol, gambling, weapons, and other industries and other types of businesses that they will not invest in. Now, we're going to look at a couple of these examples here to give you an idea. The brother talked about Sharia portfolio, and this is, I think, a really great opportunity for somebody that's new to investing to get into investment. They only invest in halal companies. There's only a $1,000 minimum investment fee. The fees that they charge you for your portfolio range from 0.5% to a little over 1%. And they have a mix of mutual funds and individual stocks. So they allow you to kind of customize your portfolio in a way that larger companies may not offer you that opportunity. And the client can be part of that investment decision. So it's a really nice company, I think, and I think it offers a lot of opportunities for somebody to start as a starting investment. Wahed Invest is interesting. It's an app. And when you download the app, you select your risk, low, medium, or high. And then you select how much money you want to invest in the investment portfolio. You pay a fixed fee anywhere from 0.8 to 0.5%, depending upon your size of your portfolio. And kind of one of the nice features of it is that you can put money in, take money out, whenever you wish. And so it's really flexible from that standpoint. Now, Amana and Azad, the last two, act as more like traditional mutual funds. They have various types of funds: income fund, growth fund, developing world fund. As the names imply, these funds are groups of stocks based upon, developing world would be what the name says. An international fund would be international stocks. Growth, or companies that are looking for high growth. And again, they take a percentage, a small percentage of the value of your portfolio as their fees. So this is investing in stocks, and a lot of different ways to do it, ranging from, if you're a beginner, an easy way to do it with, that allows you to really control your finances from that standpoint. Or if you look at Amana and Azad, if you have more assets to invest.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why should I be investing in stocks?
Well, investing in stocks is a way to invest in the American economy and or the international economy. So if you look at the American stock market, over time, and I mean decades, the average appreciation in the American stock market ranges about 10%, okay? So over time, historically, stocks have gone up 10% a year. Now, what do stocks do? They go up and they go down, right? What are they doing right now? They're going down.
But what many investors do is they look as the stocks are going down right now, and then they make a decision, that's a good stock, the price is really low because of things that are happening, inflation, all the stuff in our economy. I want to buy that stock because I think the company is good and I think it's going to go up. And so it's an investment in the economy. You're making an investment in whatever you decide is a good area to invest. The entire American economy, international, developing companies, whatever that might be. So,
And a way to save for your retirement and for big...
you can use it as a means of raising money both for your retirement. You can use it as a means of raising additional money if you want to buy a house or something like that, or a type of property. Now let's talk about real estate for just a minute. Do I have a minute?
Go for it.
Okay. So when we're talking about real estate investment, for most people, your first investment in real estate would be your home, the home that you live in. For Americans, the greatest generation of wealth in this country is owning your own home, by far, by far. If you look at people in the United States and you look at their portfolio, the value of their home and how much money they have and their 401ks and things like that, for most people, their home represents the greatest part of their portfolio. And why is that? It's because over time, the value of real estate in the United States has gone up, and gone up tremendously. We've seen that in the last couple of years, right? And so, you know, if you buy a home a couple of years ago for $200,000, and maybe today it's worth $400,000 or $500,000, that $200,000, $300,000, you didn't do anything. All you did was own the home, and the market drove the value up, and you now have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 more than you did when you bought the home. It's a great opportunity to build wealth. Now, for many people, and this is something you might want to consider, once they own the home that they live in, they might want to consider buying investment property, a rental home. So you buy a rental home, you put 20% down if you have the money, you get renters in who pay you rent. That allows you to pay the mortgage that you have on that house. So they're paying your mortgage payment. That mortgage payment, the balance is going down. The value of the house is going up, just like we talked about over years, and you're building wealth. And for many people, if you own your home and you say you have 1 or 2 or 3 investment homes, by the time you retire, you could be worth $1 million or $2 million just from that. So with that, I will thank you and take my leave.
So, mashallah, of course, I'm the most wonderful bio, and I can't find it. Bismillah. Oh, here it is. See what Bismillah does. That's not it. I can't even tell you how impressed I am, mashallah, with our, and really, mashallah, mashallah. Our next speaker is Imam Matthew Ramadan. And I'm going to try to remember the things that okay, let's not do it. So, but I want to tell you that he was one of the founding members of Masjid al-Nur here, and I got to tell him that he made Hajj with Muhammad Ali, the boxer. Those are my 2 highlights. But really, he has been an integral part of wealth building and community access in the Twin Cities. And so you'll introduce yourself even more than that. There you go.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, so you guys got to do some work here. So you got a couple of pictures up there. We're going to ask you some questions about those pictures, so be prepared. But my first question is, and I'm not fluent in Arabic, but I'm going to try my best to pronounce this correctly, from the Quran. I want to ask you, how many people know what this verse means and who it was addressed to? It's from Surah Al-Qasas. وَابْتَغِي فِيمَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Raise your hand if you know what that means. Okay, so we had like maybe 6 people, 5, well, not even that many. It means, and seek with everything that you have, all of your resources, the home of the destiny, the home of the hereafter. The after, the akhirah. Well, atansa nasibaka min ad-dunya means, but don't neglect your share of this material world. All those people who've been telling you Islam is only about you getting stuff in the by and by when you die, God didn't say that. God said you have something that's owed to you in this world, and you need to go out and get it, and don't neglect it. Do you know who that was said to? The richest man in the world, who already had everything. They say, if you read the Quran, you read this in Surah Al-Qasas, the 28th chapter of the Quran, it says that this man was so rich that just the keys to his treasure, just to be able to unlock the door to where his treasure is, will weigh down a group of strong men. That's how rich he was. We can't even imagine how rich that is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still telling him, seek the home of the hereafter, but don't neglect what you already have. This is advice we should give to everyone. Now, I'm going to ask a different question, and it might go over the heads of people over 35. So I want you to raise your hand if you know how to complete the words to this song. I ain't saying she's a gold digger. Raise your hand if you know the rest of that.
I think I do.
You see how many people know that and don't know what the Quran says about wealth? So I hope that you understand I'm not a traditional Imam. Because I use whatever it takes to get people's attention to go in a different direction. So I've got 4 pictures up there. One of them is not that quite clear. The one in the upper left is not that quite clear. Can anybody identify anybody in that picture, though? The upper left. The one. That's actually our former Governor Ventura. And then I'm kind of in the background speaking to him, and then there's another person in the foreground, Jay Takath, who was at that time the head of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and Dakotas. Across from that, on the upper right, does anybody know who that is? That's our former governor who succeeded Governor Ventura, Tim Pawlenty. Now let's make it a little easier. Down on the lower left, does anybody know who that is? Say it out loud, everybody. Jailani, that's our brother Jailani. The third picture is a stock picture from Genio, Turkey, or the fourth picture, excuse me, is a stock picture from Genio, Turkey. What do these all have in common? Governor Ventura, as governor, signed a bill into law in 2001, making Minnesota only the second state in the United States to have a halal bill. Okay. We actually worked with Governor Ventura to get that signed. And actually, the reason why that's important is because the Jewish community helped us. Did you hear what I just said? The Jewish community had a kosher bill, and they said, because we're working in cooperation for the betterment of the people of Minnesota, why don't we let you use our legislation, which also says, have you ever heard anybody selling something kosher and wasn't really kosher? What would happen to them? They'd be under the jail, right? Probably somebody like the Attorney General would put them under the jail, right? But the Jewish community came to us and said, why should we let that happen to you as Muslims? And so the state of Minnesota was the first to pass a bill that said, if you falsely label something as halal, that is a product produced in the state of Minnesota, and you sell it, not that you got it from someplace else, but if you produce it and you say it's halal and it's not produced by Muslim hands, you will go to jail. That was in 2001. It's been on the books ever since then. Tim Pawlenty, who became the governor after that, was actually a Republican sponsor in the House of that bill. He co-sponsored it with a Democrat in the Senate, but he was the one who carried it in the House. Why is it important that we know who Tim Pawlenty is? Because not only did he do this on behalf of Muslims as a Republican, but years later he ran for governor. He ran for president of the United States. And at that time, we had something else that Governor Pawlenty and Governor Ventura helped us to do, and that was we established Islamic, we didn't call it Islamic, let me correct it, we called it interest-free financing for interest-averse communities. And we had Jewish folks, we had Christian folks, and we had Muslim folks. So we didn't call it Sharia or Islamic financing. So get that out of your heads. When he ran for office as president, people said, Governor Pawlenty, How can you be president of the United States when you let those Sharia people run your state? And he canceled interest-free financing for the state of Minnesota because folks were flexing. We got Sharia financing. You don't want Sharia financing. You want financing for everybody. You don't want something that's only for Muslims. You want something that's for everybody, and that way you succeed. Have I already shown you the example of how we did it for halal? We did it for housing financing too. The reason why Jailani is up there, not for anything he did, it's what his father did. The very first interest-free home done by a Christian group in this community in Minnesota was Jailani's dad. The very first Habitat for Humanity house. There were no Muslim churches that could sponsor $50,000 to pay for that house. So we organized a group of Muslims to say, about 300 Muslims, which was way more than was normally needed for a house. And that's how we got the sweat equity up to get that first interest-free house in the state of Minnesota done through a Christian group, Habitat for Humanity. That's why Jailani's picture up there. He was only 12 years old at the time. He didn't have nothing to do with it. And finally, because we had all those things working together, Jenny-O Turkey, here in the state of Minnesota, the largest turkey producer in the country, hired all Muslim staff in many of their facilities, not because they love Muslims, but because they had a bigger market now to sell their products to worldwide. They went from just a few people to now close to 7 billion people that they formerly couldn't reach. And so you saw people being hired at Golden Plump in the St. Cloud area. You saw Jenny-O Turkeys. And so you saw what was the result of that economy. Now, my last thing, and I know I'm trying to wrap this up quickly, if you can do the next slide, or I can do it next maybe. Okay. Smartphones. Do you have a smartphone? Get your smartphone out. This is you have to work now. I don't see smartphones out. You want to find out how we're building wealth today? Take a picture of that QR code and go to that link. We haven't stopped. We still have ways to continue to have all of us working together to build wealth in this economy in the state of Minnesota, led by Muslims, but also benefiting everyone. So if you have a chance to take a picture of that QR code, you'll see that presentation. And with that, I will close.
Jazakumullah khair.
Okay.